everybody, welcome to the Vassals of Kingsgrave discussion of 13 Reasons Why Season 2. This discussion is going to be a spoiler-filled review of the themes and content of the show. For those of you who are unfamiliar, it does contain some very graphic and potentially disturbing material that pertains to sexual violence, amongst other things. So you should exercise self-care, as always, and due caution in choosing to continue and listen. With that said, my name is Bina 007. I'm really pleased that you all are listening, and I'm joined today by Casey.
Hi, it's Casey, Blue-Eyed Queen on the forums.
By Queen James.
Hello, James in real life.
And by Adam.
Hey, it's Adam, Drowned Snow on the forums.
Morning all. So I'm not sure whether a lemon cake rating should be replaced by something more appropriate, but how would you rate the show? And I think it would be interesting to know how you rate it relative to the season before, and also how you watched it. Did you binge it? Did you watch it over a period of time? So maybe Casey, you want to go first?
I'm going to give this probably like a, maybe like a 3 without considering the last episode. The last episode really brought like the whole season down for me. I thought otherwise that and not even just from a like graphic point of view, just from like a content and like it just seems weird to leave like a bunch of cliffhangers like that. It just seemed very out of place from all the rest of the episodes. So that's why I'm giving it a little bit lower for that. In comparison to the first season, I liked the first season a lot better. I think that it had more flow to it. It also was based pretty directly off of a book. So, you got some more structure coming from there from the writers than you would have like a further season.
Did you binge it or did you watch it?
I did.
Yeah, me too.
I binged it over less than 24 hours. Like I watched like 5 episodes one Friday night, and then I watched I guess the rest of it throughout Saturday, and I highly don't recommend doing that.
I agree.
It really put off like the rest of my weekend and made me feel like really down most of the time, and I didn't expect myself to feel that like down after watching all of it or going into it, I guess. But like I would exercise caution if you're just wanting to get through it. I would try to take it slow if you can.
Yeah.
It's also worth saying, if you haven't watched it yet, I mean, that is good advice. I would agree with it, and I wish I'd done it that way. You should stop now and go watch it before you listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it does have significant, there are big reveals, and you should watch them in the show if you can first. I mean, I did the same as you. My experience, Casey, is exactly the same as you. I'd give it a 3 overall. The final episode really made me very angry in ways we can get into. I rated it lower than the first season. In fact, I only watched the first season because I listened to you guys talk about it. And you talked about I want to actually thank you, because I think that was a very heartfelt episode. It was very sensitively done. And because people that I care about were talking with such sort of deep emotion about what they'd gone through in high school, it made me want to watch it. And then I watched season 2, but I did binge it, and I should have spaced it out, and it was exactly the same. It made me very melancholy, and I got quite angry about a lot of the choices made in the show, even if they were authentic. I just felt they would have ramifications with real teenagers, so we can get into all that. Adam, how about you? How did you experience season 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did it for about a week or so. So I did kind of probably 2, 3, 4 episodes at a time sort of thing. So that worked out okay. And then I think the finale I watched kind of on its own. It was frustrating. The season in general was pretty frustrating. I don't know. I mean, I hate rating this sort of thing, but I give it probably like a 2 out of 5 if we're giving a rating. I did kind of question why they needed another season, even though they left some things open at the end of the first season, which I enjoyed the first season. But I think that they did way too much revision of the history, which kind of ruined some things.
Yeah, the retconning was... There seemed to be main controversies.
Some of it was great, but ugh.
Yeah, the retconning and the final episode seemed to be the big controversies out there.
Yeah, and kind of the worst thing for me is that it was like super heavy on the trope that I really hate of like everything is happening and becoming a problem because no one communicates, especially like no one communicates with the adults, which like you sort of get in the first season, but now in the second season, like the school's got a lot of scrutiny under it, the police are involved, and people are, people are, trying to kill you. All this stuff's going on and no one communicates because, they just don't want to, because it would be bad for the story to tell someone that, someone mailed you a gun, right?
Yeah.
It's just stupid.
Did any of you know about what was happening in the final episode? Because I know some of my friends didn't watch it immediately and got spoiled because there was just so much social media reaction to it. Or was it fresh for you?
Well, I mean, the whole, I'm like, okay, this guy's going to start school shooting any minute now because they telegraphed that for, a season and a half. So I was like, that's coming. But yeah, the whole bathroom scene was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and indeed the Clay intervention. James,
Yeah.
how about you? How did you find this season?
I would have started off by giving it a 3, but after the final episode, I would give it like a 1.5 or a 2. I feel like it really upset me the way that they ended it, and I just hated the way that they kind of handled the whole school shooter aspect of the show. It really, really left a bad taste in my mouth at the end of it.
I agree.
Yeah, sounds like there's going to be a lot of fierce agreement on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's a shame we can't find a proper defender of it. Okay, so let's just run through the questions I put down because I think that'll help us cover a bunch. How did you feel about it returning period? I mean, Adam, you said you felt you had closure. I felt it was a perfect first season, but I kind of cared enough about the characters, and that's what got me through season 2. Like I liked them enough that I wanted to spend more time with them. I actually didn't like the idea that Hannah came back, even though she's a very strong actress. So
Yes.
if you were going to have a season 2, I felt that was problematic. But I wasn't as anti it as some of the people I've spoken to. But any of you have strong opinions on that either way?
Well, I mean, I don't like how she came back with Clay, I guess, which I guess we'll get into more later. But I didn't think going into it that I would like it because I kind of knew that like Hannah was going to be back in because like I follow the actress on Instagram, so like I knew that she's in the next season. But as I was watching it, I actually kind of liked the backtracking a little bit because, the story that we got in the first season was Hannah's story, and it was mostly through Hannah and Clay's perspective and what people were telling Clay. Not everybody's going to tell Clay, or Hannah's not going to tell everybody like the whole truth of what happened, every little detail that they remember, especially in a suicide note tape, I guess. So I actually kind of thought it was a good method. Like I did feel like, oh, we're doing this so we can get the actress back in. But I also felt like it made sense. And it also kind of made me feel like, yeah, nobody's perfect. Hannah can't be perfect. So she, of course, is going to have all these awful things of her twisted in court while people are talking about how they knew her. So that's how I kind of felt about it. I went into it kind of not feeling like it would be a great idea for the show to do, but I actually kind of liked how it ended up being.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that going in, I said, well, I mean, obviously they're going to cover some of her stuff, but I didn't realize that she would still be the central story of the whole season, which I just thought was kind of odd because I was more interested to see what happened with the people that were left behind and the things that they had set up, which, I mean, we got that, which was very satisfying. But I do felt that they spent too much time going back through her story and changing things unnecessarily. Like, it's obviously like we got her side of it, but there are certain things that are left out that like she wouldn't have left out. You know what I mean? Like, like her relationship all summer. Like, oh well.
We'll get to that. Believe me.
I wouldn't have mentioned that, right? Like,
yeah.
No, that would have come up. But I mean, I think retroactively they wanted to make a lot of these characters more likable. So they kind of threw dirt on her to make some of these characters more likable for the things that they did. Which is like, no one's perfect and that's okay, but I just think they went a bit too far with it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I really liked the idea of going back over the season 1 events and having the other characters speak, because one of the things that I really found problematic about season 1 was the idea that she was putting herself in a position of judgment and accusation. And because she then kills herself, it's like whatever they say, their reputation is tarnished. Like they stand accused. And I love the idea of them having the ability to not necessarily justify themselves, but just say, look, I saw it differently. This is my experience. That by committing suicide, she had kind of denied them a voice, because you can never trump that. But then to have her as a talking head with Clay, I felt undermined that a little bit. I would have loved it to have just been them having their redress, but I guess she was a very popular breakout.
Just her in the flashbacks would have been fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But I get that
I
she.
feel like they could have expedited going through, the events of last season rather than spending so much time on, the revision of the story. Just feel like they could have
Yeah.
done it a little bit faster. I mean, it was the whole second season pretty much.
I
We
feel
just
like they
went through
needed to
what we already
stretch
know.
out to 12 or 13 episodes or whatever, and that's a lot of what that was.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think like as far as season one goes, I really liked season one. If you can go back and take out like the setup of season two from season one, it would have just been a great standalone season and not gone on to a season two. But I don't know. I found the season kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so next question. And this is kind of related to Hannah returning, is it was interesting to me, like I never really thought about it, but I think there was a moment in season two, which maybe I misinterpreted, where it felt like Clay was really seeing her. Like he wasn't aware that she wasn't there in some way. And I thought, in what sense is Clay mentally ill? And I don't mean to say that pejoratively or judgmentally, but are we meant to understand that he's really having visions of her, or
I think so.
I kind of thought the opposite. I think that he's definitely mentally ill. From what I could tell, I don't think that she ever revealed any information that he didn't know. So it's not like she's necessarily, like a spirit or a ghost speaking with him. I
No,
think
yeah,
that,
it's all his creation. Yeah.
yeah,
but part of that is just narrative device, right? So at first I was like, okay, this is just a kind of like cool narrative device. But at one point I thought, are the showrunners and writers really wanting us to think that he actually has a problem with seeing her?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's supposed like, I mean, especially like that scene where he's got the gun to his head and like, I don't know. I mean, it seems like he's actually having these visions of her. I mean, for most of the season, it just seemed like he was sort of talking to himself and imagining her. But yeah, it does seem like it was like when he's talking to her with other people around, that's a bit much.
yeah, or like the fact that he was, trying to sleep with Sky and kept seeing her instead. Like he's definitely, I think he's definitely sick. He's definitely seeing her. So
Yeah, it's potentially more disturbing than anything else in that season, then, because I mean that's properly
Yeah,
worrying.
and I had heard that
And his
like the
parents don't have
ending
any
was
clue.
bad and everyone hated it, so I was afraid like he was going to commit suicide at the end. I think that's what
Huh.
I kind of thought was coming. He was going to break.
It just really worries me that his parents, who do come across as basically decent, to the point of like taking in and wanting to adopt a former or a current junkie, haven't figured out that their son is really mentally unwell. But I suppose that's the theme of the show, isn't it? That people don't notice stuff that's happening right around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
I also felt a little bit weird about this at first, like especially with the scenes with Sky. I felt like it made sense for him to see Hannah and Sky because he kind of just, we left off that season with him falling into this relationship for like seeing like it seemed like he wanted to be it because he thought like he could save her rather than like some kind of just plain relationship connection or romantic connection. So I felt like that portion of it made sense. I felt like his reasons for dating Sky initially seemed a bit off. But as the season progressed, I just felt like I was confused. I was like, okay, are we getting into another like faction of mental health here where like we're gonna like he's gonna end up in the hospital for being crazy or something, or
Yeah.
or not crazy but for having like some kind of mental health issue. And it seemed like it was just all in his, like, it was like a device to use for closure almost, like him talking to her and then at the final episode having her kind of like go into the light, I guess, metaphorically.
Well, this is really my problem with it, that dealing with depression that can lead to is so grave it leads to suicide. They may have failed in some aspects, but they really try to treat that seriously and give it room and explore it. I feel what Clay's going through as a mental health issue is, deserves that amount of treatment, but it kind of isn't being given it because it's a narrative device too, and I don't
It wasn't
know.
really about him.
Yeah, so I feel it's not being maybe given the level of respect and gravity that it probably deserves, or focus.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because at the same time he's trying to save everyone else.
Yeah, which is also, I don't know, problematic. Do you guys want to get into any other sort of Clay-related stuff? I mean, maybe the relationships that he tries to have, or the kind of antagonistic relationship with Justin that becomes kind of like a caring one, if we go through the rest of the questions, or just do the questions and other stuff will come up.
I'd like to talk about Sky for a second.
Yeah, I think that's
While we're
important.
kind of on, yeah, because it's interesting that they I mean, she was only in the beginning of the season, but I think that she was actually like a good example of like, I don't know, I guess just, like accepting help at some point. Like we all need to accept help. She goes to this like facility. Clay doesn't understand it. I think like as just another high schooler or boyfriend, like seeing their girlfriend going through this, like wouldn't understand what this is. But I think that it kind of like gave like the show kind of gave a like, look, you can do this and you can get better type of feel. I don't know how I feel about how the show depicted, well, I mean, bipolar is very like varied in people, so I guess I can't like say anything onto that. But she was very short-lived. I felt like a little bit weird that we left off on her like in such a weird place, but I felt like I thought like it was a good thing that the show did to kind of like conclude her story and not just like leave her as like mopey
totally.
yeah, girlfriend.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the outcome with Sky is like a shining example of how they should have handled mental health, but they kind of skipped over that entire part of her seeking help with her mom. I feel like if they would have kind of incorporated her mom or, trying to seek help for her bipolar disorder, it would have, at least shown the audience that there is a way to kind of reach out for help and I don't know.
Especially just to partly balance all the times that people reach out to parents and are let down or people in authority. Like show that reaching out can pay off and that it can prove successful and save your life literally. I think she is a fascinating character. I feel her mental health journey got so much more respect than Clay's, because I guess he's not really on a journey yet, maybe. But it just feels that as we leave this season, I'm so concerned about Clay. Clay was always the kind of white knight, sort of normal kid who was looking out for this very troubled girl in season 1. He was the everyman that we could come into this story through. But I feel that in season 2, the more I think about it, the more I think he's probably the most troubled and fragile person in it. But yeah.
And I guess the fear is, for me, kind of like when you go into season 3, I mean, we know that the actress that plays Hannah's not coming back. And so it might just be like, oh, he got better. Like, that was nothing sort of thing. Is kind of where I see that going.
Yeah.
Like, just completely ignored.
Right.
Okay, so how do you feel about all the retconning? I mean, particularly, I think the one that everyone kind of pounced on was the fact that, this guy who she puts on the tapes for basically stealing little notes that would have perhaps boosted her self-confidence, which always felt to me like a very thin reason to put someone on those tapes. Apparently, they'd actually had this full-blown, actually quite beautiful and loving relationship and a whole bunch of sex.
And a much bigger reason to be angry at him.
Yeah, that he then just goes back to his jock friends or whatever. But
yeah, and she just didn't mention it because it was, obviously not in the book or in the mind of the writers. Like that's the only reason it wasn't mentioned.
And why do they need to make him nicer? Is that because they want him to then help the recovery through, the physio and everything? Like just make him much nicer to the other characters?
Kind of. Well, he wasn't like the worst character in season 1, but I mean, they very clearly spent a lot of time kind of upgrading a few people. You had Team A, Team B, sort of, right? And then you had the bad guys who I couldn't even remember what that one guy's name was. The guy that was like actually running around doing shit all season, like behind the scenes. But like, yeah, they made him real evil. Yeah, he was like barely in the first season, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
well, it's also
he wasn't in it for part of it, but yeah, I feel like he was kind of just like an easy villain to have at the end.
Exactly.
Right.
It just felt a bit too tacked on. I mean, really, the person, if they wanted to make that kind of sidekick of Bryce, who's really evil, this was the character they could have done it with. And I don't know, they seemed to sort of chicken out. Maybe they thought the actor was too likable or he didn't want to go there. But it just felt weird to me also that he didn't know about the clubhouse.
Yeah, I have a different opinion about Zach in the show. I think that he, like, I feel like, yeah, they used him as a device, and yeah, she had like, if what they redid the tapes, she would have a much better reason to put him on the tapes, or like to say, I think that she may, like, if we wanted to like put this from a show like perspective, I think that they wanted to make it feel like she didn't want to talk about the relationship at all or allude to any relationship between the two of them. I think that that's why maybe she didn't talk about it, if we want to like make sense of the context, I guess. But I also think
she just wanted to erase it.
Yeah, especially since like that's like it's a very serious relationship that like she probably felt very hurt from after ending that. I feel like Zach represents a portion of a lot of guys who just like are kind of like buddy buddy with a lot of people who end up being really shitty people who just kind of let these things happen. I think that that's like I actually think that what they did here with Zach's character makes sense, because I think that the majority, or not the majority, but there are a lot of people out there who like know people who are shitty to women, who are shitty to other people in general, and like just ignore it and like try to forget about it and just continue to be their friend. And it just seems like it seemed like it makes sense that he's the way he is. The only thing I didn't like about Zach's character is what they did at the end, where they made him the guy that was sending all the pictures, right?
Right, because you were like, well, who else was doing that? But then again, like, it didn't really seem to fit him.
Wait,
like, is that a thing? Kind of a rando.
Did I miss that? Oh my god.
That was at the end, yeah.
Yeah, when they were in the clubhouse.
That's why he did know about the clubhouse. He just lied about knowing about the clubhouse.
Oh, but then why like this whole redemption thing all season, and he's so nice doing all the physical therapy, and then I don't get it.
He's like, I sent you these photos, but that's all I could manage. Like, maybe send them to the police or
like maybe not. Or something. I think that he knows how fucked up like Clay and I'm forgetting his name.
Alex Standall.
Alex.
Yes. There we go.
I just had to bring up IMDb.
Yeah, I pulled it up too.
I felt like the way that he interacted with them the whole season like made sense, that he was kind of like playing this two-faced type character where he like didn't want to end his friendship with the other like, you know, quote unquote bad guys, but like he also like felt sympathy for these other kids. When that all happened, where like you figure out that he's the one sending the pictures, I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense to his character other than him being such a coward, I guess, to like actually figure it out. And also just knowing how like unstable those people are and like sending them pictures like that just seems very
Right.
I just don't understand, like, what kind of power do they think that Clay has that they can, you know, Clay's going to solve everything. He didn't do much last season, so why do they think that sending him these pictures was going to...
Yeah. Well, I mean, in fairness, Clay also thinks he has that power.
They hadn't released the tapes. That was the confusing thing to me, is that, like, I just sort of assumed, like, after the first couple episodes, I'd assumed that, like, everyone had heard them. And then when you realize that, like, he had taken the tapes and, like, the police and, you know, her parents and all that had heard them, but, like, the general public of the school still was like, well, you know, they didn't really know. So.
Yeah, I didn't understand that until Alex was trying to get the tapes to re-listen to them. Before that, like you said, I thought that everybody had already heard them.
Which would have made more sense to me, you know, but I guess they had to. I think they probably did that because they needed to come up with a reason why everyone wasn't like shitting on Bryce at the school right away. So, because they probably heard about it but didn't really know, you know.
I think that was surprising for me too. I also think that, like, you know, going back to like thinking that Clay can solve it all. Clay did get the confession out of Bryce at the end of the first season, which I think a lot of people
which none of them heard.
I thought that they heard it though.
Yeah,
I thought that he released it somehow.
Yeah, I think
eventually
the thing was they had it on the tapes, but because Bryce didn't know that he was going to be recorded, that they couldn't use it against him. So, because I think the police even heard the tapes, but they just, because wasn't it on the 13th tape that he,
It was on his tape. It was added to the final tape.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think everyone should have been able to hear it. I just think that maybe, like, in the context of law, they couldn't use it against him.
No, but I mean, I think, like, until he released the tapes, like, halfway through the season or whatever, I don't think everyone had heard that.
I mean, there are like from a like real life perspective, there are a lot of laws about like recording, and like if you record someone without their permission, you can actually like
what state does this
go to jail.
Because in some states, you can't use anything unless you have two-party consent. In some states, you only need one party's consent, which means that like if you're talking with someone, you're fine. The other person doesn't have to know, but you know, right? And so it really varies by state as to what they can use. But I thought the police on the show, or at least had also said that like it wasn't clear enough or something. Was why they couldn't use it, and there was no like the victim was dead, she couldn't say anything, so it was just one piece that wasn't enough.
Yeah. Okay, on to the next question. One that I feel very passionately about. How do you feel about the depiction of the court case against the school and the outcome?
I mean, I was pretty angry at the outcome of the case. It seems like I think the depiction was accurate in the sense that lawyers are gonna bring up everything and anything that can, save their side of the case, especially like a school that has lots of money behind it. And I think it was implied that Bryce's family was helping in some kind of way for the financial aspect of that, just to like save their like reputation and everything. It makes sense in that sense that they would go against people that way, and especially those kids. And it was actually pretty heartbreaking to just see like these lawyers just tear these kids apart, that they all really know like that they've been through a lot of shit with the suicide.
And like on the school district side, like you saw the principal was like, oh yeah, well no, I just handed them over. I've never listened to them. And even like the one teacher, like she was listening to them, kind of for the first time. Like they kind of didn't really want to know. I mean, there was definitely a problem at the school. I mean, I can understand the verdicts sort of maybe from a legal sense. I don't know, like jury instruction and all that. Like they tried to make a point that like this could have happened either way, but. I mean, I also think they did a pretty good job of proving that the school wasn't really doing what they should have, and even like stuff that was happening during the trial, if that could have been brought up, the fact that like they're still protecting those baseball players and everything.
I think that I know I said this in the first season review that I did, but I think a lot of the point of this show is to really show like adults that this stuff is happening, and not really it's surrounding high schoolers, but I don't think the show is for high schoolers. I think this is for adults to realize that, especially parents maybe, to realize that this kind of stuff is happening in your own school and you're not doing anything about it, potentially.
And how easy it is to not see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily blame the parents for not knowing.
I don't blame the parents
unfortunately
necessarily either.
Yeah, the school, unfortunately, like they weren't told about a lot of stuff. And I mean, by the time the verdict comes out, because of what they did this season, I almost was like, yeah, I guess it fits, because they spent the whole season with, like I said, I mean, guy tries to run you off the road and murder you. They knock over that the drugstore. There's just all kinds of like really serious stuff that's going on. Like a kid who shot himself gets a bullet in his locker, then he gets a gun, and they don't tell anyone about it. I'm sorry, but like that just does not add up. And I mean, I understand they're just kids or whatever, but at a certain point, like when clearly someone is like wishing you dead and trying to murder you, and you know that the police are now involved, the school is hypersensitive to this now. Like if you can't just say, well, they wouldn't do anything. Like that just doesn't fit. These kids are, everyone's just kind of putting their own life in danger, and like I think a lot of these problems could have been solved quicker if they had just brought it to someone, just the right person, I guess. But
it is really like I'm thinking about like, yeah, that obviously makes sense, and I think all of us here are adults, and that makes perfect sense to us. But like, I remember being a teenager and like thinking that like something super serious is something that I needed to like keep to myself, or like something that I can just brush off. Like kids just don't understand like the gravity of some things or some problems that like they're experiencing.
Right. Yeah, to an extent.
Even if it seems
like
obvious.
Said, you get someone's a gun in a bag, and you're just like, well, this is not anything that anyone else needs to know about. Like, come on.
Right, yeah, and especially being that Alex's dad was a cop, you think that he would just kind of like bring it to him right away. But the fact that he kind of hid it from his dad, I didn't really like that.
Yeah, I mean, that just, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I understand like stuff like, like the girl that was, if you've been assaulted or something happens, I understand not wanting to tell anyone about that. And, some of these things, I get it. Like, you don't want anyone to know. But some of this stuff is like Clay got hit, the shit beat out of him by, 3 or 4, obviously, members of the baseball team wearing, masks. And he just sort of like limps off. I'm like, you tell me he didn't go to the nurse's office and they weren't like, hey, what the hell happened? Like, he was like seriously beat. And just no one even, he was fine. No one knew about that.
I think there's also like it's kind of like the same, it's just nervousness of getting a lot of like, I think with Alex's case with getting the gun, like if you if you go to your parents and you're like, hey, this happened to me, and which is what he should have done, like they're still going to be like, they're going to freak out, they're going to give him probably more restrictions, they're going to take over his life more than they already are, and he
Right.
probably, and he's also just
But
generally
shouldn't
not
he
in a
be
good
freaking
state of
out?
mind.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, he's not in a normal state of mind. Like he already, like he shot himself in the head, so his emotion, like just like from a plain scientific point of view, like you can tell like that his
yeah, he's
whole
off. Yeah.
like there's a lot of things that are going on with him that aren't going right, and like his thought processes, I'm sure, like as you can see, are like in like with his outbursts are just not on the right like.
But again, I mean, how do you justify Clay, who clearly needed medical attention? Just,
Yeah.
he just went through the day with broken ribs or whatever else happened to him, and no one noticed. And like, I'm sorry, but like, I would have at least expected him to like crawl somewhere to get some help and like, try to come up with a lie or something maybe. But no, he just brushed it off and was like, well, no one needs to know about this. The exact thing that is the problem. The exact thing that the school would probably be like, okay, it was 3 kids in baseball uniforms. You can't say exactly who they were, but obviously something's going on. Like you saw very quickly once the like public opinion turned, they canceled the season. They did all this stuff. So I think they would have reacted in the same way.
I mean, I get that, but I also think that I think that one of the themes of this season is just like a general distrust of the school where like, yeah, like Clay got beat up, but like, does he trust the school right now? I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
Right.
So
but the parents,
why would
the
he?
police, like there are people to trust. That's sort of my point. Is like he doesn't want to go to the counselor because the counselor fucked up, and he's trying to do a great job now. A little late, but I understand people not really trusting him. But at the same time, like he's the only one like trying to sound the alarm, which is odd. You would think that they would be a lot more sensitive. And I think if they went to the right person, these kids, could have had a lot of these problems solved.
Yeah. It's definitely frustrating to see that happen. And I think that, at least, I think that's what like the writers in the show, directors were going for you to feel that kind of frustration that like still this isn't happening. Still no change is happening here.
Yeah, but to me, it's like I said, it's a trope that I really hate. Like if you're watching like the romantic comedy or whatever it is, and it's like something happens and there's a misunderstanding, or someone just doesn't communicate, and it causes the conflict when they could easily just explain what happened. But you know what? We need to go for an hour with no one knowing because that creates the conflict. And you're like, well, in real life that would never happen. It's just not how people work. That people try to explain themselves. People try to expose things. That's typically the side that it airs on.
Well,
so
that's not all
everyone
people.
does. No, not everyone, but when everyone is like kind of having the same thing on the show, like just hide everything, don't let anyone know about anything. Keep it between this small little group of friends. Like I don't know.
I don't think I have anything more to say about the court case other than just it's awful what those lawyers.
It was hard to watch.
Doing. Yeah.
It just amazes me. I'm kind of curious how that would work in the UK, like whether kids under the age of 18 could be grilled like that as witnesses as if they were adults. I would hope not. But I find it very hard to sort of make judgments about the school. I just think the school system here is the school system that I experienced, not that it's so different to one that we have now. Being single sex, not mixed, not having that level of sexual harassment and violence. It's so hard for me to judge and to say whether the school, I don't know. I feel so out of depth discussing these issues, I have to say. Okay, so let's move again to the other court case that then transpired in the series, which was the one against Bryce and the outcome. And I have to say, this really troubled me. I get that it's realistic that she wouldn't get a conviction, but I just thought, my God, if this is one of the most watched programs amongst teenage girls, you're telling them that every guy out there is a potential aggressor to you, and that, you're right to feel under threat. And by the way, even if you do have the guts to come forward, no one will believe you. I just found that profoundly disturbing, and maybe it's right, but Jesus Christ, if I were a 16-year-old girl who'd just been raped by a classmate, I would watch the program. And I know they were trying to give a message, which is Jessica feels better now. She's got closure. She's owned it. She's so brave for coming forward. And if you watch the 13 Reasons Why sort of after show on Netflix, that's definitely the kind of message they were trying to give. And they was like, you're right to be angry. She didn't get a conviction. Well, as an adult, I feel very comfortably angry she didn't get a conviction, and that's a mature response I can have. But if I were watching this as a 16-year-old, I would be like, there is no way in hell I'm going to come forward and tell someone I've been raped. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think they wanted to show, like, hey, this is still on trial. See how terrible this is. The guy that, didn't actually do the act got more time and a more severe punishment. And yeah, but I do think that that's changing. Like, who is the judge that was it the Stanford rape case? The guy that got like 6 months or whatever because they didn't want to ruin his future.
Yeah,
Like
that's
he got
exactly what I was
recalled,
thinking.
right? Like,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
you hear that in the news all the time about kids that are rapists who just like they're like, oh, you're another white guy, maybe we can give you another chance here, and you're just gonna get probation. It's very realistic to what's actually happening in the U.S. all the time.
yeah, it is. But
Yeah.
my point is that I do think it's starting to change. And I mean, I would have been nice if they could have maybe shown like a bit more hopeful of a message. But I mean, I understand what they were doing. But I mean, I guess we're just not going to see Bryce anymore. He's just free, and that's really shitty. So
I just think it's so
Yeah,
dangerous. Casey posted a link in the Skype chat that I'll put in the show notes or in the show post for this about a parents' interest group that said that Netflix should pull the season for many reasons, but for some of the hopelessness. And it was dangerous because it was targeting vulnerable young teenagers and giving them all sorts of messages that were profoundly kind of about their powerlessness in a way.
This is where I kind of get a little bit like my opinion of like who the show is for is probably different than maybe even like the people that the showrunners are even wanting for this show to be for. I think that it's for adults. I think it's for parents. I think that like parents should exercise caution and like probably know what their kids are watching. I know it's impossible to know all the time, but like, I think that, if you should be monitoring what your kids are watching. You shouldn't have to like make Netflix take this off just because it's a little bit, or just because it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't really like that idea, but I do understand that teenagers watching this is not great. But teenagers watching a lot of other programs out there really they shouldn't be.
I mean, like I remember being a teenager and watching like Jersey Shore and wondering like if this was like what I have to like deal with in college.
Is this where I'm coming to? Yeah.
like terrible stuff. Like
I don't want to
MTV.
get into a situation.
Right. Exactly. How am I going to have time for the gym, the tan, and the laundry?
Yeah.
Gonna have to skip one of those.
But I do think there's something very contradictory though in having all these resources. Like season 2 was a lot more on it with resources for people who've been victims. So everything around the show is telling you reach out for help, and everything in the show is saying, it's futile, don't bother.
Right.
And I feel it wanted to have its cake and eat it.
I think that it's depicting like reality, and I think that I see your point, but I also think that like it's tough because I really want like from my perspective, from a kid that like I dealt with bullying in high school and stuff like that, I want adults and teachers to see that this is the reality of things, even if your kids aren't talking about it. So I want this show to exist. But I agree that like maybe I think that they need to exercise more caution and also like maybe make the show more like or advertise it more for adults rather than like, using like cute hipster things to like get kids to come into it or whatever they're doing.
Yeah. And with the case against Bryce, that wasn't a civil case, was it, or how was that handled? Because couldn't she open up a civil case against him with a different judge? Maybe just to sue him for, pain and
like
suffering.
OJ, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good thing if they tried that maybe next season and brought in like a female judge to have a different perspective and actually come down hard on Bryce.
Well, I mean, just having like a male versus female judge is not going to like necessarily mean. And I would also feel a little bit like, all judges should kind of be fair. You would hope, at least.
Yeah, and I felt like the case against him was pretty clear. Like, it wasn't one of those where, like, well, look, you were both drunk, and clearly she wanted it or whatever. Like, I felt like like you had a witness that was like, yeah, he shouldn't have been in there. She didn't know he was in there. Like, and the judge is like, 3 months probation is fine. Like,
I mean,
you're like, holy crap.
Right.
I mean, like, you see Bryce's, like, plea or quote unquote plea to the judge to be like, hey, I'm sorry about this, I made a huge mistake.
I've got smart guy glasses on and I'm just
like
really nice
I
guy.
Look like a good kid.
He turned into Clark Kent.
Right. Yeah.
But like, and like, if you're just any judge that like doesn't know him, like maybe you would believe it. But like, and I think it also shows like the financial problem with courts. Like, you know, Bryce has very good lawyers. Bryce has his parents supporting him. He has all the money in the world to help him get out of this situation as quickly as possible. Whereas, oh God, why am I forgetting his name?
Justin.
Justin
He's an addict. He's yada yada yada.
Justin, just because he's an addict, he doesn't have parents, and because he knew about this happening and didn't report it. I think that was why he was being arrested or whatever. Because he doesn't have people who financially support him, he has to stay in jail while Bryce gets to kick it at home. That's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, the court system and stuff like that is absolutely messed up. I mean, there was a show I was actually watching on Netflix. It was all about people who had confessions that were either later reversed or that said that they were coerced, and it's just another one of those things about the court system that you're like, holy crap,
Yeah, and I mean even even their sentences are different. Like Bryce gets sentenced 3 months probation, whereas Justin gets sentenced 6 months. It just just because
the guy who actually committed the crime.
And just because of who they are, Bryce looks like a good kid who won't do anything more, whereas because Justin has had a bad upbringing and he is addicted to drugs, he gets all this shit on him. It made me very angry from just generally just angry. Back to what Bina was saying though, with potentially harming kids or not harming kids, I mean making people feel like they can't come forward in court because it's all not going to matter. I get that, but I think that if they did if they made it a happier ending, I think that it wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, I guess I'm just in two minds. I think the grim reality of all of this is great for us adults watching, and kids are smart, they know the reality too. I really worry, and I know you can't pin things on a single TV program, but I really worry about the impact it might be having on vulnerable teenagers. But if not this, it'll be something else, I guess. Maybe. How do you all feel about the sympathy for the school shooter storyline, which was set up really, I mean, very definitely in the last episode of the first season, but all the way through this?
Right.
I love the actor. I think this is a great performance. I love that he tried to turn it around.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's a horror. I kind of as TV, I love it, but I just feel that if I was a victim or had known school shooter victims, I would be like, what the fuck?
Right.
So this is where I don't know. It's so hard because it felt like they were setting this up he's gonna be a school shooter, but then it also felt like they were setting it up hey, you can stop these people by being not shitty and being a friend, and right.
That's what bothered me too.
They had that whole storyline of, and I think what they're trying to say is hey, just kind of, you need to try to pay attention. But some of these people are just messed up, because he goes off and it seems like he comes back and he's fine, but then oh well, the girl's going out with someone else, and but he can handle it. And then he's attacked, so now he's got a reason. It's almost like well, you sort of justified it, set him off, is what it felt like. Well, someone did something to him, this horrible assault, so now he's got a reason to do what he's about to do. And I don't know if that's how it normally goes with that in real life. And it's such a varied topic. I don't know. Their message was very confused and kind of all over the place. I don't think they were really sure what they were wanting to do.
I felt like the show. James, did you want to go? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I feel like the season overall I was okay with where it was going. And then that last episode, that last scene just is what completely destroyed it for me. I just think it's completely ridiculous that the way that they handled it. The fact that, they whisked this shooter off into the night to go fix themselves. He needs professional help.
And they just left his gun behind. I mean, that'll go well.
Yeah, and it's just I know we were talking before that, this is not necessarily a show for kids, but kids are going to watch this. And
exactly.
You just have to imagine, what kind of a message does that send? You don't need professional help for serious mental illness. You could your friends can take care of it.
I'll just go stop the guy. It'll be fine.
Right, yeah.
But he himself is mentally ill, right? So...
Right. But I mean, but for Tony to kind of endorse it, it seemed like the entire little group that they had was okay with it at the end. I mean, Tony is the one who came by in his hot rod to come.
I guess the only thing you can say there is that they were trying to find anything to prevent what was about to happen. Like where they go from there, I mean, is confusing. But
I mean,
I mean,
we're
that's like
seeing
the
an
only.
incomplete storyline,
We'll
aren't
see.
we? They could go take him to a facility or something afterwards, but
See, I feel
I
like
mean, if they do not report this somehow and get him help, then there's a serious problem. If they just say, well, let's get rid of these weapons and this never happened and we're not going to let you get in trouble, that's a serious problem.
I don't think they're going to. Look at the way that they handled Justin's drug addiction. I mean, people don't come off heroin that easy. And they just, we're going to lock him in a room for 48 hours because that's how long it takes to detox. Sorry, but no matter how detoxed your body is, a heroin addict is a heroin addict.
It reminds me of, I don't know if any of you... I don't know if any of you guys watch Shameless, but like, yeah, when that happens, like, oh yeah, we're just gonna get him clean. Like, there's a scene in like the latest season where like there's a junkie it's a comedy obviously, but there's a junkie that's been breaking into houses, and one of the kids like locks him up, for several days. Then he just gets clean, and he's like, hey, he's miraculously gets clean. So his friends come and do the same thing to get clean, and it's obviously ridiculous.
I mean, that's why I actually did like when Justin starts shooting up again at the end.
Right.
Because actually I was really concerned when they showed him, you can just detox in your friend's bedroom, that would make heroin use seem kind of like, I can do this with actually very few consequences.
Right.
And he's supposed to be in like a program, right? I mean, I think they said that. So, I mean, they're trying to get him help. They just need to pay a little closer attention.
Even with like the detox process, I mean, it's really dangerous for someone to detox off of heroin and not be monitored like medically.
Right.
I mean, your body can go into shock. There's so many factors that they didn't really even
they could die.
Consider.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know. I've seen people detox and come off of serious hard drugs like that, and it's not that easy just to tell them, this is what Jessica would want. So, that was enough to keep them there. I mean, I've seen people jump out of windows to get to drugs, like it's just, I don't know. I think that
that is a dangerous message. Well. I agree.
Yeah, one of the many dangerous messages.
Yeah, I feel like the show kind of like wanted to touch like every problem. And which bothers me because of course we have tons of problems going on. We have problematic court systems. We have a suicide problem. We have a gun shooter problem. We have a drug problem. I think all of us kind of like, I think most people are aware that these problems at least exist. But I don't like that we need to discuss all of them in one setting.
It felt like they wanted to be the most relevant and topical show.
Like let Hannah have her moment here. Let's talk about problem with bullying and suicide, like the relationship between that. Like, let's just talk about that for a second.
Agreed. Yeah.
As far as why am I forgetting everybody's names? Picture Kid.
Zach.
No, I'm sorry. The kid with the gun.
Tyler.
The thing that bothered me most about Tyler, like I almost felt like his storyline like didn't really need to be in there. But because I think it takes away from Hannah's. But at the same time, it's just like that last episode where they, there's the scene where the bathroom scene. They're basically making a assault or sexual assault, whatever you want to call it, victim be a shooter, and that just I think gives the complete wrong message of
it uses
what
the whole
makes
thing as a plot device.
And that's an awful thing, and that kind of stuff happens for sure for some people. Like it, I don't want to undermine that bad shit like what Tyler went through happens, but at the same time, you're gonna make him a shooter after that and show people that
there was no need to conflate the two things.
Exactly.
I applaud so strongly the depiction of male on male sexual violence. And the idea that, a show that's been all about women being victims, that you can show that this does happen to men and it's even more taboo and stigmatized to talk about it, and to have shown the impact on Tyler and him dealing with it, I would have praised that to the ceiling. But to then conflate that with a shooter storyline, I find, actually, the character they could have really shown as a victim of that kind of abuse would have been Justin. He comes back to school, the former jock, he doesn't want anything to do with him, he's a junkie, he's been brutalized brutalized by the mother's boyfriend before, and that the guys go after him because he's welched on them and given away information. That would have been so meaningful and such an amazing way to explore that. But with Tyler, even though I get the character arc and I find it compelling and I love the actor, I just thought, oh, you've now made a situation so complicated about victimhood and then what becomes justified or explainable that there's no way you can get out of this mess now. This is really difficult for you.
Yeah, and I mean, if their whole thing was just to show like what was going to break Tyler, I don't think they had to involve the sexual violence. I mean, the bathroom scene before that happens is enough, where he's getting his head slammed into a porcelain sink and, you know, broken through a mirror. Like, I feel like that was a hugely violent part, and then they had to cap it off with what they did.
And I also felt it's weird because he comes in, he gets these two randos to come in with him, his boys, you know, like, hey, we're gonna deliver some justice on this guy because he, you know, screwed up our season. Okay, but like they just were suddenly down for that too. Like, like come on.
I mean, that is like horrific.
Did any of you have an issue with how graphically it was depicted? Because that was very unusual, right, for this kind of programming.
I afterwards, like, I found myself like I couldn't even breathe. Like in that moment, I was just like holding breath as it was happening. It was just like I don't know. It was heartbreaking to see. It was a little bit too much. It was
so unexpected, which I mean, I guess is what they wanted. But I just I did not see that coming.
I felt the same about that scene as I did with the bathtub scene with Hannah in season 1, where it was just like it was too much to show. Like you could have done it in another way if that's what you wanted to show narratively. You just didn't have to be that graphic about it.
See, I think a little bit differently about this. It's a terribly graphic scene, and if you have any kind of like if this could possibly even trigger you, I would never recommend it to anybody to watch that kind of scene. But at the same time, I think that the best thing about the show is the reality of it. Like showing that, this is a person killing themselves. This isn't normally shown on TV. It wasn't a romanticized scene. It was just what happened. And with this one, I think my problem with it lies more with how they made Tyler afterwards. It's not with the actual act.
Right.
Because I think that, sexual violence against men is, again, as Bina was saying, something that's just not portrayed enough or at all. So, I mean, it was terribly violent, terribly hard to watch, and just horrifying. And, it even seems a little bit weird, but at the same time, I know people who are bullied, not in the same way, but I know people who have had similar things happen to them. So it doesn't seem too far out of scope from a reality perspective.
Gosh, yeah. No, I mean, I praise them for trying to handle it, but
it's definitely a hard topic, and it's definitely I have a lot of friends who think that this show shouldn't be on the air, and I get that feeling too. But in my perspective, I think that we need to shed a light on these types of things that are actually happening.
Yeah, I just swing back and forth. I think for people like me and parents and people who didn't have that kind of experience in high school, it's the most eye-opening experience, and it just makes you so much more empathetic to what kids today might be going through. And that's so socially valuable. And yet, on the other hand, I think a lot of the other stuff it does is also socially valuable. And maybe just showing a Jessica-type storyline makes girls feel not alone, and that's the value. But there's so much. I just really worry about the teenagers. I have no qualification whatsoever to know whether I'm right or wrong in that. But
I mean, I'm horrified of my son going to school, going to high school.
This is actually why I'm very, very. This is a side note, but I'm petrified about the decline of single-sex education in the UK, because I think all girls' schools are quite a valuable thing. The ability to go to school from the age of 13 through 18 and not have to worry about how you look and what a boy's going to think of you, I think is one of the most precious gifts I was unintentionally given by my parents. I don't think they did it for that reason, but it's one of the biggest gifts for my confidence and my well-being that I was ever given. But yeah, anyway, that's off the topic. So how do you feel? I mean, I guess we've all hinted at this, that the final episode is very problematic. It has caused a lot of controversy on social media. How do we feel about the kids' response? And I guess, interestingly, do you guys want to watch season 3? And if so, what do you think happens in it? Lots of questions there. Go at whatever one you want to do.
Want to right now? No. Like if it was available, I wouldn't. But by the time it comes out, maybe.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
hear your kid in the background. I'm not laughing at you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Happy
if it were
Father's Day.
on, because I have no self-discipline, I would watch. But I can tell it's going to make, unless it does something radical, it's going to, almost all the choices they can do from her are going to make me angry in some way. It feels like they're setting up Clay to take the fall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't.
But that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, if they do that, that would no. I mean,
Right.
that is what I see them doing is having him go, oh, I brought this gun, but it's cool. I was the only one here. No one else involved. And then they try to go get Tyler help and sweep it under the rug, which is a huge mistake.
Right. Like I said, I think that entire, aspect of the show is really what turned me off of season 2. I was okay with where it was going until they did that.
Yeah, I was generally okay too until that last episode. It just it just felt so strange and so unrealistic. I guess maybe I don't know if if it's in a that's happened before where kids real life kids have stopped the shooting in some similar manner, but I don't think that that's the case.
I think we would have heard of that, right? If that was the thing.
Well, I mean, maybe
kids
not. But
kids have reported these guys, and they've been stopped before they've done anything. That's the only thing I can think of that's happened.
I mean, it's such a for such a serious situation that affects a large amount of people, just seems very out of place and making the kids seem like vigilantes. I get why they don't want to go to the school again. As I was saying before, I think that they just don't trust the school. I think that they don't trust the system right now because the outcome of the courts.
Sure.
Yeah.
I get that side of it, but at the same time, it's you think of the reality of these kinds of situations that are happening in the U.S. and you're just no, this is not how it should go down.
Yeah, I mean, because I think when they got a text beforehand, right, of what was going on, they kind of found out. That's why they ran out to the front of the school. Because
he
they knew
texted
Tyler
the girl,
was coming.
right? Probably to get out or something. We don't know exactly what that was, but it was probably
Okay.
I'm coming, get out of there sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then she showed them when they were like, what the hell? And so you've got a room full of people, you try to evacuate in a hurry, create a panic. Is that going to help? I mean, I get that, them maybe trying to go and confront him or maybe just lock the doors and hide everyone. But running away with him, I don't know. Because I feel like in that moment, what does he say? He's like, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't realize how much you were hurting. They realized that maybe they failed this guy who was not really any of their friends, but is it more their own guilt that is causing this to go this way? I don't know.
I think they feel I think the reason that this happened is because they feel like Tyler is also a victim, which he is. But at the same time, if you're a shooter, you're a shooter.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't excuse you, rolling up to a school with an arsenal to just start shooting at people.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I
just
guess-
in a practicality sense, I just want to know, where are these kids getting all these guns? I mean, how do they?
Yeah, I think that's a question they didn't want to cover because very clearly his parents, they don't have any guns. They're anti-gun, and that's
that
typically
confused me
these school
too.
shooters. They get them from a family member who unfortunately allows the access to be way too easy. So this is a little confusing. It's not to say that a teenager couldn't get these somehow, but it is a little confusing because they're not usually and this little nerd kid, he's not in a gang going on the black market, buying a gun. So yeah, I mean, where the hell did he get these from?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was confusing to me. But.
Yeah.
And especially the level of guns that he had. It wasn't just a one handgun. He had a big rifle.
He had an
AK-47.
There you go.
No,
yes,
no, he had not an AK-47. He had some sort of AR-15 or something like that.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but he had he probably had at least half a dozen guns, right? I think there was a shotgun, several handguns.
Yeah.
So I mean that's thousands of dollars worth of an arsenal for one. So the money.
Yeah. And I mean, this is me generalizing what's going on in the U.S., but it seems like a lot of the kids are getting these guns from their parents somehow. So I don't understand why they made the parents like supportive, I guess, in that sense, or like very like anti-gun type of people where like again, like yeah, where is he getting these things? And
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that they
yeah.
depicted it in season one, I almost kind of thought like, maybe that was like his parents gave him this
Yeah.
outlet of going to a shooting range to
Right.
get
Which
out,
is yeah.
which
Yep.
would have been understandable. But the fact that, in season two they bring up that his parents do not know about it, it was so confusing to me.
Right, and
And
neither of
I
their
didn't.
parents did. Like it's Alex's dad that takes them out to the shooting range, right? The sheriff.
Yeah. I think Tyler's dad calls Alex's dad or something and asks to do that.
Right, because they're like, we don't know anything about these, so neither of the parents really know anything about it. I did think they were setting up their little like buddy relationship to like that they were going to do this together. So I think it's an interesting turn when he was like, "That's a crazy idea, man. I'm not going to do that."
Yeah.
Right.
I loved that. I thought that was really brilliantly done.
Yeah. I did like that too.
Yeah, I felt like the friendship that Tyler and again, I'm terrible with names, the other kid was again like I thought that was like a good storyline. I thought that was interesting. I thought that I thought that like I felt like at the like while watching that might give Tyler like a second chance, even though like I knew that like from the cliffhanger in season one that like probably not. But it like made me feel like Tyler was like, having some friends, having some fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess they could have gone that way to show, maybe that sometimes it doesn't take a lot to put someone on the right path. But it's the whole topic is so charged right now, and there are, no one has like a solution.
Yeah, and I mean the same.
Kids, so.
Yeah, I mean the day that the show came out, a school shooting happened. So.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I don't remember what school it was because I mean there's been so many, but yeah.
Yeah, and it took me like probably a few weeks before I actually watched the whole season. So
yeah. As far as like watching season 3, to be honest, I don't know. I think that this show, like this season in particular, not that the other season didn't, but like I was in a very like bad like mental place, I guess, after watching that show, like after watching that season, especially after binge watching it. And because of that, like, I don't know if I can actually like make myself watch the third season, to be honest.
Do you think Netflix, I mean, I don't believe it should censor the show, right? Some people think it shouldn't be on. It troubles me, but in general, I err on the sides of liberty, so go at it. They have a choice, though. They choose to put it out as a big chunk of episodes. Other shows, they don't. Should they put it out? Should they put it out one episode a week?
They do it a little different over in the UK, Bina, because there are a lot of shows that you guys get on Netflix basically as they air here, because there aren't networks that pick it up. But over here, almost everything Netflix does is dropped in a chunk like that.
Yeah, but it means that they have the technology to do it, right? So they could choose
they could
to
do
put
it
out
or whatever
13 Reasons Why, one episode a week to give people a time to sort of digest, discuss, socialize, get through, right? So should they do that?
First half, second half, or little by little, yeah.
Right, yeah.
They could. It's just, like I said, that's just sort of their brand, is here's the whole season, and, binge. That's kind of what they've developed here.
Yeah, I don't think...
And it might be helpful.
Yeah, break the format, though. As far as watching season 3, I don't know. I would probably wait until I see other reactions online. See if
read
people
the
like
spoilers
it or not.
first.
Right, yeah, and just maybe not all the spoilers, but kind of get a good idea of where the season's going to go before I actually dedicate time to watch it. Just because I didn't binge this all at once, I kind of watched a couple episodes here and there, and I just feel like at the end I was so upset with the way that the season went that I just felt like I wasted so much time. So yeah, I'd kind of wait until it comes out and see other people's reactions.
Yeah. I think that as far as like, this like being available all at once, or Netflix making it accessible to kids, I think that there's a theme. There's something going on that I've seen with a lot of teens lately where like their parents aren't like, they don't know what they're watching. And this has particularly been a problem, like not even with like 13 Reasons Why, but like with YouTube, watching YouTubers be in terrible situations. Like there is, I don't know if anybody heard about like the Logan Paul scandal.
Yeah,
No,
that
can
was
you
bad.
explain to
Yeah,
me what that
yeah.
was?
He was in
So
yeah.
Logan Paul was in Japan, and he went to this area. I don't remember what the specific place was called, but it's basically a place where a lot of Japanese people commit suicide. And suicide in Japan is actually, like, percentage-wise, a very bad problem because of like pressure put on kids or on people in general, just to do like I think like it's associated with like their work ethic.
Interesting fact, Japan is, as an
Yeah.
economist, Japan is the only country in the world or major market in the world where the unemployment rate is positively correlated with the suicide rate. So where people lose their job and you see it in the suicide stats, which is just horrific.
Interesting.
But anyways, the Logan Paul went to this place, he filmed it, and he like I don't remember, like I didn't watch like the video obviously, but like he was kind of like
He
giggling and
happened across
laughing and like
He happened across a dead body and he made a few flippant remarks, which were not
and he
cool.
also his like the screenshot that they used to like advertise the video was of a dead person
Jesus.
that committed suicide.
That is absurd.
And
and then I think
the problem
it got
I'm
pulled,
seeing,
like after a day or something, right?
yeah, it got pulled pretty quickly. But the problem that like, or maybe after 24 hours, but the problem is like the problem isn't exactly like what Logan Paul is doing. Like obviously that is a problem, but the bigger problem to me that came out of that what happened is all the comments for that, all of his fans were like LOL, this is so funny, like all these like just like not understanding the gravity of it and like defending him and like after it was taken off and all that, be like, don't hate Logan Paul.
All I saw
was a
was
big
like people
problem.
demanding that like they cancel him and like take him off of YouTube.
Yeah, that's all adults and not fans. There are teenagers that watch, like his fan base is basically
people,
high schoolers. So like seeing all these teens being like, LOL, this is so funny.
And
like,
wasn't he one of like the Vine stars, that would make like 15-second videos?
Yeah.
So that kind of explains a lot of how, it's all just how can I shock you as quick as possible, because he can only make really short videos on Vine.
Yeah, and I mean, like, afterwards, he, like, kind of, like, I guess he, like, kind of changed it around, but, like, it doesn't matter because his fan base still supports him, and his fan base doesn't think that what he did was a bad thing, and I think, like, I've seen a lot of parents who, like, don't let their kids watch Logan Paul, but I think that a lot of parents just don't know about people like Logan Paul or what their kids are watching, or and bringing it back to 13 Reasons Why, like, you put Netflix in front of your kid and they like, they'll watch a show and maybe you don't know what they're watching, and maybe parents should be more aware. And I mean, I'm saying that coming from like a upbringing of my parents not letting me watch Nickelodeon. So,
Yeah, I mean, some people are probably still like that, but I think for the most part, a lot of that's gone.
Yeah, it's a lot more open.
Especially with streaming services, you go, okay, just watch the good stuff, right? And I mean, they have parental controls, which parents don't bother with.
Oh no, I remember watching Real World on MTV, and like, in retrospect, like, there was some themes in there that like I didn't understand as a 15-year-old, but like my dad like had a sit down talk with me, and he's like, you're not gonna watch that because it's bad and you don't understand why it's bad.
The important question, Casey, which season of The Real World was it?
I have no idea.
Was it Vegas? Because that was just trash.
That was horrible. Freaking Trishelle.
I have no
That's
idea.
like the last one I remember.
Oh my
It was
God.
like outtakes. That's what I remember.
Yeah, that's not the sort of thing that's good for teenagers to watch, probably.
But at the time, as a teenager, I felt
yeah.
like my parents were being too harsh. I'm like, I want to know what goes on in the real world,
Well, I remember like parents being like, Beavis and Butthead is, from the devil, and I was like, it's not really that interesting to me. But like a lot of, my friends would like sneak around and watch it or whatever. You know?
Oh yeah, like kids can definitely be sneaky, which is where kind of Netflix is, I guess, should like realize their control of having this kind of show on there. But at the same time, like if you have a kid sneaking around watching shows, like it kind of tells like something's up with that, I guess.
I feel like I'm gonna put like the nanny apps on my kid's phone and like check his internet history every week, and like I'm just gonna be like all over that. I feel like
I think you need
I'm
to
gonna be like super invasive, but at the same time, like there's just like none of this was around when I was a kid, so like I feel like it'll be an invasion of privacy to a certain extent, but like there'll be stuff where I'm gonna trust him, and then little by little it'll be more and more. I mean, he'll learn that as he grows. I don't know how else to do it right now.
Yeah. No, it's hard with the internet just being so available.
Are there any other characters or themes or scenes or any praise for any acting performances or anything else that you'd like to do on the show before we close out?
Well, I did want to touch on. I was kind of upset with the way that they ended Jessica's storyline for this season, because I felt like, as far as character building, they were doing a good job of showing that she did have PTSD or whatever it was, and then to end it with her just like jumping on Justin so freely,
I know,
really like
that
Oh
was
my
pissed
God.
me off.
unbelievable.
That I did not like that. Like, she couldn't even handle someone being near her or touching her, and then suddenly she lays eyes on this guy and she just jumps all over him. It was just, as far as character building, just in like a showrunner sense, I think that was handled really terribly. And just the fact that they made it like that easy in the snap of a finger for her to get over her PTSD and what happened to her. So I didn't like where they went with that.
Could not agree more.
Going a little bit in an opposite direction, I wanted to talk about, I think it's Amanda, the cheerleader, who was Bryce's girlfriend.
Oh,
I actually,
Chloe.
Chloe, sorry. I'm looking at a list of characters, and Amanda is not it. But anyways, I actually felt like that was like very interesting, like a very interesting place for them to go. And I felt like, like if you're like dating the most popular guy in school, you're probably going to ignore the fact that like whatever rumors are going out around him. And then, but also like, just like her conflictedness in him towards the end, and I guess the cliffhanger, her pregnancy, I felt like it was very compelling and very interesting. An interesting side of things that, again, we just don't normally see.
And so real. I mean, there are just those women out there, and probably men. I feel men do that with careers, actually. I feel that there are a lot of women out there who define or get their self-confidence by who they date, and don't, even if they know that they're wrong for them, don't have the strength to leave. And I think with men, it's often the same with, they get their self-esteem by the brand of the company that they work for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I think with, as far as like Chloe and the whole pregnancy aspect, and then I think the pregnancy was the reason why she didn't like go against him in the court case, I think, right?
It's kind of left up in the air. I don't know if she knew that she was pregnant yet, because isn't that like, it's like a month after, right?
Oh, okay. Because I was just thinking, if that was the case, then I could kind of understand why she would not have pointed the finger at him, because then people are, she's still going to have this baby and she's going to raise this baby, and people are going to keep saying, oh, that was the baby that was a product of rape. So maybe that may be why she kind of pulled back from it. I mean, as far as like a character building thing, maybe that was strong of them, and maybe touch on it next season. But I don't know. It was kind of hard to understand. I guess I didn't understand the month gap there. So
Yeah. And I guess like lastly on like good things that the show did, I thought that it's Mr. Porter, right? The counselor.
Yeah.
I felt like the actor for that did amazing, because
Agreed.
I think that kind of perspective is a reality where like, yeah, you're a counselor. Kids probably, I mean, like at least like I remember like not wanting to talk to my counselors ever. And they're mostly like, because of like, they're mostly there for like, at least for me, they were mostly there for like, college choosing and whatnot.
We don't
And I don't
even
think...
have counselors in English schools.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I mean, like now schools have like a bunch of
stiff upper lip, mate, stiff upper lip.
I mean, nowadays schools have like a bunch of counselors and a school psychologist on hand. But seeing this guy go through like not knowing like what was going on, to realizing that he's one of the reasons why, to like trying to do the best that he can out of that situation, was I felt like that was the right thing. I felt like he did an amazing job at portraying that like conflictedness and guiltiness of that, what that character would be going through.
Yeah, and I think his acting during his testimony was just, I mean, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And actually, coming back to what I was saying before, I think it was very important to show that, to show the kids that even though, who are watching, that even though some of the adults might let you down, if they understand, if you talk to them, they really do care. Like with Derek Luke, his performance, you just knew that Mr. Porter would never truly get over this, that he did care. He was trying to do the right thing, even at the expense of his own job. I mean, yeah, I think we really needed that glimmer of hope of goodness, of parental kind of level goodness in this show.
Yeah, agreed.
Right, anything else from anyone else?
Not that I can think of.
Okie
I
dokie.
think we got it.
Well, we've got some hard outs, so I guess we can wrap it up. I want to thank everyone for participating. There is a discussion thread on the forums if you catch up with this show and want to sort of give your 2 cents. I guess it'll be interesting to see if Vok does a Series 3 review, if there's enough people who are still watching and interested.
Yeah.
I guess I would say I'm invested enough in the characters that I probably will watch. It might not be with the sense of urgency that I had at season 2, but I don't know. I'm pretty invested in the show right now. Have any of you, by the way, read the book?
Yes.
Is it worth reading?
I would say that it's very different from the show in that, like, it's really only about Hannah and Clay. And Clay is very different.
Yeah, some of the characters have a lot less to mention, most of the characters, but it's a nice companion piece, I think.
Okay.
I read it before watching the show, and usually, like, whatever I do first, I end up liking better, but in this case, I actually ended up liking the show better. I thought it gave more depth, and I thought it, like, the ending of the book is very strange, in my opinion.
Okay, well, that's a qualified yes. I think I'll probably check that out. But thank you all for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you to Casey, Adam, and James. And if you want to catch up on other stuff that Vok's doing, Google VOK Podcast or Vassals of Kingsgrave. We have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you want to get involved, however, join the forums of a podcast device and fire. Take care of yourselves, and hopefully we'll all chat soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Bina.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
And